All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to our November 4th edition of This Week in Crypto. It's been a wild ride and mostly in a good way. We've got a lot to report here, and it's really the first week we've seen uh, where it legitimately looked as though we are hitting kind of an altcoin breakout, or at least we have been for the past week. We've seen a breakout, and really the question, as you guys likely saw from the thumbnail and the title of this stream, is whether this can actually continue or if it's kind of a get your hopes up kind of week to get people back on the altcoin train and then have our hearts broken like we've seen so many times here in 2022. Um, you know, we've seen a few weeks where we've had these, 20% plus surges for multiple altcoins. Um, and usually they've had legs that have happened due to, either Bitcoin having a bit of a rebound or Ethereum, post merge having a nice recovery. But you can see here, Bitcoin only jumped plus 2% the past week, Ethereum plus 6%. And then you've got all of these altcoins that just had massive gains. BNB 22%, Dogecoin another 45%, Matic 27, Litecoin 21, Algorand 20, Chiliz 29, OKB 29, Wrapped BNB 22, Phantom 27. It's just all over the place right now. And the big question is this kind of a follow-up of Ethereum's run from a few weeks ago where it jumped back above 1600 and then fell, and obviously Ethereum is right back at the 1600 point right now, but altcoins have really surpassed anything that Ethereum is doing, and it's mainly ETH-based assets that are on these big surges right now too. Not all of them, but many. So what we're going to try to get into today is, of course, look at the basics of how Bitcoin's and Ethereum's health is compared to the rest of the markets, but also pay a little special attention to what the sentiment is for so many of these altcoins, what the funding rate looks like, whether people are actually putting their money where their mouth is, because sometimes people can be super euphoric about an asset but secretly be betting that the price is going to fall, or vice versa. They're super fearful and they're longing an altcoin like crazy. So we're going to try to look into as much as we can. And of course, on our chats, if you're unfamiliar, you can drop requests for us to take a special peek at some of your favorite assets, especially if they're Ethereum based. That gives us a lot of data to work with because that blockchain, we've got full access to all metrics. There's still plenty of other assets out there where we've got a lot of access to metrics. So let us know what you're thinking, and keep those questions in mind for about 40 after the hour, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Taking a look more at what we're seeing here on the data screener, we've got Bitcoin, of course, and Ethereum just mild gains. You can see a lot of these bright greens indicating big breakouts over the past week. And also take a look at social volume. It's very interesting. Bright red for Bitcoin and Ethereum indicating we had downturns in the amount of social volume, the amount of discussion on social platforms that are dedicated to the top two assets in crypto by market cap. But then you start looking at all of these altcoins, which are seeing big increases. XRP, another 42% compared to last week. Dogecoin almost tripled in the amount of discussion this past week versus the week before. Matic doubled. You get the idea. There's just a lot of discussion and focus that is being dedicated to non-Bitcoin and Ethereum assets. And typically when that happens, yeah, it's a sign of a bit of euphoria and a sign of people chasing pumps more so than hodling and waiting and being comfortable with their portfolios. And that isn't always a bad thing. In a vacuum, it's concerning because it means there's euphoria around assets that are not directly related to growing the crypto ecosystem in terms of price stability for the long term. Yes, a lot of these have technologies that can advance the blockchain and cryptocurrencies in general, but if you don't have Bitcoin and to a lesser extent Ethereum as that foundation, it can often cause some shaky results, kind of a house of cards effect, where Bitcoin and Ethereum are still at the bottom, and as soon as one of them get pulled, the entire foundation of cards falls with it. Not necessarily is that what will end up happening, but we have to basically watch this next week to ensure that Bitcoin and Ethereum have some continued growth and follow-up weeks to match what's going on with all of these smaller market cap assets, if that makes sense. By the way, we should have our founder, Maxim, joining soon. I just saw a little message that he will be
here. Already here.
He's already blessed us with his presence. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. Yeah, finally glad to be in a stable place without too much travel. So
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Has everything been going well in your area of the world right now?
Well, this is probably the last year when things will go bad. Where I am now. Switzerland is and some other areas in the world can also be, I don't know, New Zealand, I assume, will be also one of the last. The others maybe not so good to live, like Antarctica. But yeah, sure. Everything is quiet. Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. And what do you think about these markets right now?
I see also on the chat, at least on our YouTube chat, there are quite some people. Well, we know it probably even from our Pro channel. So for those who did not see, we've been discussing there lately a kind of potential setup, very interesting one. It was a bit confusing last maybe 3 to 5 days, but there is a chance we now make a spike to some new highs. We're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum, yeah? And we were expecting it to come with if it comes with some good news. If we see good news or attitude of the majority, this is now time, this is for real, very cool, then it has two messages for us. Short term, okay, we'll correct. Too much good news, not good, and it will end up on a pattern level 5 sub. But then mid to long term, that means potentially very cool things. So we're looking forward now for next 2 to 3 days. We will be able to make a decisive breakup, flow of good news, and finalize pattern which will look like 5 up if we have it. Wow. Then we need some patience after potential correction and load up longs. But still, I would wait for 2 days. You can FOMO if you wish. Just be ready. There will be some potential unpleasant feeling once you correct. But it looks quite serious. The first time not the first time. We had one occasion where we unfortunately didn't work out. So it's the second time when we have a chance to go up here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yesterday seemed like an interesting sign because the S&P had a big decline once again, which it has had plenty of in 2022. But crypto was unaffected, and I was starting to see, assets like Matic and Sushi and a continued run from Dogecoin going on. Ethereum was climbing a bit as well, and that's been pretty atypical throughout the year, where we see crypto pumping at least mildly, while the S&P and equities are struggling to breathe. And then, overnight, at least on my end, about I don't know, anywhere between 6 to 10 hours ago, I started seeing some enormous pumps like Loopring going crazy. Sushi, as I mentioned, Matic had a big run just in the past 10 hours or so. And there's just all sorts of assets that are climbing without the reliance on the S&P 500 right now. And, it's interesting, gold and silver are on a big rebound day right now. So there could be some correlation going on between crypto and, kind of the digital gold versus the real gold, while the S&P is not so focused on at the moment. And I've seen plenty of people saying, this time is different. We're going to see the altcoin party continue to grow as people deny it. That's true to an extent. And that last part of it is really the big Question, are people denying the altcoin party right now, or is everyone kind of jumping on the FOMO train? Because, you know, social volume may say one thing, but funding rate may see another. I'll come back to this chart in just a moment because I want to look at the correlation. But in terms of where people are putting, you know, money where their mouth is, Maxim, I thought this was really interesting. This is the average funding rates of Bitcoin here in the blue line and altcoins here with the purple line. In terms of the perpetual contract funding rate on exchanges, anything in the red means there's a slight bias toward long. Anything in the green means there's a bias towards shorts. And you can see Bitcoin's been pretty stable, just slightly in the long category. But check out what's going on with the altcoins, just serious shorting going on for the last 24 hours or so. You can see it really started to dip into short territory, I guess I should say about, yeah, right around 24 hours ago. And like, you can see what happens. These blue bars is Bitcoin's price, but obviously altcoins are kind of going like this, even higher than what Bitcoin's price is doing right now. And it's all happening while shorters are expecting the markets to collapse at any moment and they can profit on that. And so far they've gotten really burned. What do you think about this, Maxim? Have you been looking at the funding rates at all?
I do. But you know, maybe I was a bit distracted because there was not much interest in going on in Bitcoin Ethereum for some time, except one strong move a few weeks ago. But what you are showing here is it? Wait, my screen is not so big here. So it's a funded rate for Bitcoin, or is it for altcoins?
So blue is the Bitcoin funding rate, and purple is the average altcoin funding rate, including most of the top 100 assets. So like Band, for example, having a huge short right now.
Band, yeah, it's crazy, yeah.
Well, yeah, Bancor.
The symmetry is filled with shorters. Okay, it will need to open the new territory, I believe.
Yeah, and you know, there's a chance that Band is kind of skewing these lines down just on its own.
Still,
looking
it's
at
a kind of a sign. Yeah.
So a lot of them are actually fairly neutral, but Band is obviously huge down right now. Dent, OMG Network, Sia Coin,
and the others after Band, the second this green line. What is this?
This one here?
No, to the right.
So this is Dent.
Dent, my goodness, still alive. Okay, well, I understand shorters. Good.
Yeah, so it's very interesting right now. But
can you come back to overview to see what is it for Bitcoin funded, right?
Sure. Yeah, we'll open up Sandbase for that to make it easier. So right here, we've got the 8-hour and the 1-hour funding rate. Let me just look at the past week. And it looks like it's mostly pretty neutral. So this yellow line is the 1-hour funding rate for DYDX and FTX that actually have data updating every 1 hour. And then the red line is Binance and Bitfinex. So you can see they're both fairly neutral at the moment, just sitting here right around zero. They've had a few moments of being long. And when you see these big yellow spikes, like right here and here, you can see price tops form. This one was interesting because this didn't have a price top until a couple hours later. But for the most part, you know, these aren't serious spikes anyways, compared to a lot of spikes over the previous months that have looked a little more like that. So it's definitely interesting what's happening right now. It's kind of Bitcoin being ignored and, you know, a few altcoins here and there getting majorly shorted and mostly having traders pay the price when they try. And then, you know, we can get into some of the more social metrics. I wanted to highlight, I'll still come back to
as we are talking, I think both Bitcoin and Ethereum just shy away from breaking this latest highs, really very close. So maybe even during our talk, we might get it, this new highs. There is a good chance. And if people who on the stream in our chat, if you notice, because we cannot at the same time analyze social media or look around what people are saying, if there is a consensus or like majority or big part of people suddenly turn very positive and find a reason for it. So the reasoning why it's so good and why it'd be even better. So just let know. The moment we see it, it's an interesting sign. Probably we will see it over weekend, but who knows? Maybe even today.
Yeah. So you're feeling pretty optimistic based on kind of
Long
almost long term for sure. And the argument is kind of it's a regression to the mean more than anything. We've had so much bleeding throughout 2022 that even if on-chain metrics are looking kind of average, you know, a lot of people on our team see that there's a path to a decent rebound right now from all of the pain and shrinking of the market caps that have been going on throughout the year, and so many weekends dropping out.
Like a suppressed coil, yeah. But the main reason for us being for quite some time, I think for 1 month at least, when not longer, we've been observing founding rate, also, so to say, for economic 10 years US bill or treasury yield. And I came maybe 1 week ago in our channel saying, okay, that's it, this is the top. And if this is the top, well, it will have quite substantial, I think I call it a change of pricing patterns. It's too big, it's just too big. It should have big impact. And since then, yeah, we tried yesterday after FOMC and inflation notes, there was a last push up, just I think, to attract more people. And we didn't break the high, so there is still a very high chance we will see lower yield, means lower inflation numbers, and it's not priced in at all. Whatever I read, people still think that inflation not under control, you can control it, they will have to hike it up. Imagine it changes the language, what impact will have. It doesn't mean it will change, but if it changes, this is a high risk, high reward bet you are doing on both stocks, and especially in crypto stocks, to move possible. Actually, from bottom to up, it's the current stage can be moved, but crypto is it's like a needle. You move very easily, all the big players, and it's easier for them, as they believe there is a correlation between Nasdaq, S&P, and crypto, and to get the whole market 10% in S&P, it's one thing, but you can get 50% in crypto. So you guess where the money will flow. So if this pattern confirms and we see indeed inflation topped up for time being, I don't think it's very easy with our governments to to fight against inflation. They will do a lot of stupid things, so it will come back. But for time being, if they see under control, it means next step will be what? They will print again money, so all the money will flow again to the system. And we might see indeed, and this is the main reason, fundamentally. Yeah? If people ask for fundamentally main reason why we should consider seriously one side of the trade. Yeah, and oh, by the way, yeah, we did a new high in Bitcoin at least. Let me see if it is.
Did it just make a breakout in the last few minutes?
It's just as we were talking, yeah, not literally like the last 2 minutes.
So, I mean, I'm just going to check how equities look here at the same time really quick. And it looks like equities are up now after, yeah, they've made a bit of a run just since the start of this call about 20 minutes ago. And that's just pushing crypto up higher. So crypto was kind of able to, at least altcoins were able to really start pushing up even without the reliance on equities. And now that equities are pumping a little bit themselves, crypto's just having quite a breakout party at the moment, it seems. So this chart, we're looking at, you know, Ethereum's price in particular, because Ethereum's been a bit more correlated, interestingly, to the S&P than Bitcoin is. Bitcoin's been much more flat, but you can see that Ethereum here in green is just starting to move up, while the S&P kind of had this down day, like especially right here. This was November 2nd on Wednesday. and then the third. They went down both of the previous 2 days, and now they're up a little bit. But Ethereum didn't really drop the way the S&P did, and that's actually been pretty abnormal. Even if I go back, I mean, this is the last 6 months. It really started in January when we saw a pretty tight correlation going on. You can see how the green and blue lines have fluctuated, and Ethereum's even kind of lagged behind. But just over the past, I guess, work week here, we've seen that that's changed a bit. And we've seen plenty of teases, you know, like a correlation in the opposite direction where the S&P was blossoming a little bit, but Ethereum was not moving. And now it's kind of the opposite, where we're seeing a bit of upward movement from crypto without the S&P tagging along. And that's a very good sign, as Maxim and I have studied over the last couple of years, really. The correlation that works best for crypto pumps is typically zero correlation, not a negative correlation with the S&P, not a very tight one where they're moving the same direction, just no correlation at all. And right now, I mean, maybe it's coincidental, but you can see how tight it's been with gold over maybe the last 6 days or so. Gold is this gold line here, and ever since right around October 30th, right before Halloween here in the US, gold and Ethereum have been doing some strangely close things, especially today where they're breaking out. But that usually is short-lived, and we'd find that a lot more significant if it goes on for another week or two. But for now, Ethereum and altcoins in general are kind of moving at the pace of their own drum at the moment, and that's always a good sign. It doesn't really seem to, I mean, it still seems to care what the equities are doing because it's pumping more now that the S&P is picked up. But regardless, it seems to care a lot less about the S&P than it has in a long time. And for that, we are happy if we're bulls. So another thing I wanted to point out, we had a weekly recap that was posted just about 8 to 10 hours ago. And it went over quite a bit, including the gap between bullish sentiment and bearish sentiment going on in social media. And over the last year, we highlighted 5 moments where there was a big gap between the bullish and bearish sentiment, and when there was a tight gap. You'll notice always they're on the same axis, the blue and red spikes, always pretty much you're going to see a little bit more bullish commentary than bearish commentary. We scrape the words buy, buying, bought, bottom, or bullish. Just coincidentally, I'll start with a B. And those represent the blue lines. And then sell, selling, sold, top, or bearish represents the red lines here. So this gives a pretty nice sample size, I've found, between euphoric kinds of words and fearful kinds of words. When there's a huge gap and the blue lines are really breaking out without the red lines following too much, that's a sign of euphoria, and it typically means that prices are likely to drop. Not always, there are going to be anomalies, but this is one of many measurements that definitely has alpha more times than not. And you can see the big spikes, even this one and some of the ones I didn't highlight. There are price tops that occur shortly afterwards, just as people are starting to get optimistic about a rebound. Here, here, and here, they all went down. And then when the negative comments start to pick up without a huge spike in euphoria, that is a sign of fear, and that's where we tend to see prices bounce. We saw one here back in January, and I could have highlighted more, but I just wanted to keep it simple. We see the one in January, and then we saw the more recent one where the fearful lines almost caught up to the euphoric lines because there was so much talk of prices continuing to move down. And obviously the opposite came true, and prices have grown even a little more just in the last couple of days since I took this screenshot. Prices have continued to go up, and that's kind of what we want to look for. We want to see that traders are not believers in price rebounds right now and price pumps. Although when shorting right now, that's a further sign that people really just are fearful and don't believe that the price rallies can either start or can continue. So I thought that was an interesting thing. And of course, you guys can go to our social trends page and look up any individual or combination of words at any time to look, by themselves how they're doing, or you can look at them as direct comparisons. You can even do more than just 2 lines here. You could do 3, 4, 5, whatever you'd like. Just know it, if you really start to go above 4, it can get pretty cluttered. So keep that in mind. So besides that, in the article, we talked about the social trends. We also talked about social dominance, and I'll show the main chart in just a moment. Bitcoin's social dominance right now, at least in 2022, we found that 20% is a nice rule of thumb for whether we're getting a healthy enough amount of discussion and focus related to Bitcoin versus the other top 100 market cap assets. That's essentially how our social dominance metric works. It measures specifically whatever asset you're looking at, the percentage of discussion related to it, and how that compares to the collaborative top 100 assets and what their YouTube streams about crypto right and left. But regardless, let's move on with the show. We were just talking, get my train of thought back here. We were just talking a little bit about Bitcoin social dominance. Yeah, we're getting confirmations it's back on. That's great to see. We were talking about how social dominance in Bitcoin specifically is a sign that there is a certain amount of fear because there's euphoria. Euphoria generally means that there is less talk about Bitcoin to pump 2x, 3x more in a given interval than Bitcoin can. So this, in essence, is kind of a sign of fear because people are flocking into the less volatile asset. While here, these are signs right here and here that we are seeing a lot of the crowd super confident and getting into Dogecoin, getting into Matic, getting into Sushi, all these assets that are pumping right now because they believe the crypto markets have a strong chance of going up. And keep in mind, this is a long-term indicator. We're looking at 1 year of data right now. This isn't last week. This isn't last month. So you're going to see plenty of anomalies in between. But overall, we've seen enough evidence to feel confident that we need Bitcoin social dominance to stay relatively high for prices to continue going up. Because when it's down like this, you tend to see prices drop because too many people are focused on altcoins that are not directly responsible for pushing prices on in their portfolios throughout 2022. So keep that in mind. It is a pretty big yellow flag right now. I'm not going to say that, this is low Bitcoin social dominance is going to drag crypto to a halt, but it does mean that we're in kind of a danger area, and it's indicating that the focus needs to get back to Bitcoin soon, or that house of cards effect could come into effect. Yeah, more.
Brian, generally, yeah. You're right. But I would say that this is kind of important when we turn in from bearish to bullish side. At least it was a key prerequisite in the last 5 years. I experienced 2 crashes, and then eventually Bitcoin, and now Bitcoin plus Ethereum dominance should be high, and because they move market. Now, because we've already recovered for some time, the low was actually, I don't know exactly how many days, but we're not in the first week even. So is this, in a sense, we're in a later stage of recovery from the bottom, and in a later stage, alts are actually the ones. Alts means more risk, and it means already there is a little bit relief in the market. And when there is relief and there is money ready for risk, they will flow into, I don't know what you call it, Matic, or I don't know, even Bent, whatever reason is. because when someone banned, actually, I think it's a good example, unless there are some reasons, but I'm afraid it's just market makers or some pump and dump group playing it. You push it, and the crowd is generally warmed up because we've been making new highs for the last weeks, and they jump on the wagon just to get wrecked. So this happens at the end of 5 advance. Alts will be pumping here and there everywhere. It's normal. But it eventually leads, I would even say in a few days, we will finalize this 5 move up and we will have maybe one big correction. So extreme conditions, like we've seen with band, if we'll see it with 2, 3, or 5 more tokens which were disappearing from radar, then we might have enough reasons for fifth and weaker correction. But the current stage is normal behavior. I wouldn't necessarily say that it generally means bad. I would expect it to happen now. If this happens when we're on the bottom and then suddenly we see pumps and the pumps coming from alts, well, that's very suspicious here. But we've seen Ethereum was moving quite strong. Bitcoin initially not so strong, but then it catch up. It's not so bad.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. And believe me, I believe social dominance is not a perfect science by any means. I mean, the way I look at many of our metrics, it's kind of a probability metric more than anything, where the higher we are in a range, the more likely an outcome will occur, and the lower we are, or if it's closer to the mean, that means it's more random and anything can happen. So really, it's all about extremes when we look at something like social dominance. You know, when we can see Bitcoin really, really soaring, and people are fearful of a rally coming to an end, that's when the rallies continue, right? Everyone's talking about Bitcoin here because they don't want to risk getting into Dogecoin when it's already up 200% or something. And then Dogecoin goes up 500% instead, until people are super hyped about getting into altcoins instead, and then the house of cards crumbles. And you can just see plenty of examples in the extremes here over the past 5 years that we're looking at right now, where when we go super low in social dominance, prices tend to have a collapse eventually. It doesn't mean tomorrow or even next week. As Maxim said, there could be one more leg up before a big leg down that starts to scare people again. But right now, just based on kind of looking in a vacuum, we do see that there is not a lot of hype about Bitcoin and a ton of hype about all the alts that are pumping right now. So that's just the main lesson to take away. And I still agree with Maxim. There's so many other factors that are going into the pumps that are happening right now. And of course, we just had the FOMC raise interest rates by another 75 BPS. I think it's their 4th of the year, or even 5th. I can't keep track anymore, but it was certainly one of many that we've seen where we initially saw prices drop because of that and then quickly rebounded. So there are a lot of external factors that still are playing into price fluctuations. COVID is still happening, even if many areas of the world have completely moved on from it. You know, the Ukraine and Russia war is still happening. And these are all things that have impacted prices dramatically this year in 2022. All right, so besides social dominance, just to recap on the October report that we just released, we talked about funding rates. MVRV is very interesting. Let's take a live look actually and see if it's up at the moment. Okay, so it may refresh at any moment, but right now we can take a look and see that many of these altcoins, at least on the MVRV end, are showing some danger areas. And it makes sense because the short term, the leftmost, there it goes, now it's doing a refresh. So we'll just take a look at this one. The leftmost bars are super, super in danger areas because they've pumped so much just in the past 24 hours. And that's largely why the average trading returns are indicating that there's a little bit of an overbought signal happening due to the amount of average trading returns on the short-term end being so high. not all altcoins are pumping, right? They're kind of all over the place right now. So you see many that are overbought and even a few that are still underbought. FTX, for example, Celsius, if you still want to risk being in a coin that sort of declared bankruptcy, AMP, all sorts of assets, they're really all over the place. And you can see Bitcoin here sitting right around neutral, Ethereum right around neutral. And these kind of sand sheets models can really help guide you on what might still have a little meat on the bone for a rise and what may be coming to an end, at least temporarily, before, you know, a bit of a cool down period. So yeah, we talked a little bit about that in the weekly report. We've also talked about the whale behavior on stable coins versus Bitcoin. We can see the red line here represents USDT addresses holding between $100,000 all the way up to $10 million. This is kind of the key whale group that we like to look at to see how much buying power those top key stakeholders have at any given moment. And since early August, we've actually seen quite an accumulation. They're closing in on 30% of USDT held once again, which is their highest, I believe, since like May or June, when they dumped a bunch of USDT all at once. USDC is something that's also been rising, even though it's not pictured right now in terms of whale accumulation there. And then on the flip side, if we look at Bitcoin, this gold line here, it continues to decline. The 100 to 10,000 Bitcoin addresses are holding less and less and less. And it's actually looked that way for about a year now, because the dump started technically right in late October of 2021. And I'll prove that really quick. We go to 100, we'll just merge it, 100 to 10,000 Bitcoin. Take that off. We'll add the price. Put that in bar form. Make it just a bit darker. And we'll just look at the past 1 year. Take a look at, we'll look at 2 years actually, give a little context. Take a look at the whale line and how it performed relative to Bitcoin's price. Yeah, that's actually quite a correlation, isn't it? We can see, you know, major accumulation going on in November of 2020. It was climbing, and it went all the way up to the then April all-time high before big drop off, and price followed pretty closely, I would say. And then right here, you know, this was a prime bullish divergence, major accumulation in mid-May of 2020, or 2021, I should say, as price was continuing to decline, but whales were defiant, continued climbing until there was a big pump. They started dumping a little bit. This was kind of a bearish divergence right here where price was going up, whales were dumping, and eventually we saw that dump. Rinse and repeat, they started accumulating again all the way up until a new all-time high in October, and they started dumping. And even though we saw that November all-time high just get a little bit higher, the whales had already begun their major dump fest that's gone all the way until present day. And that's a concern, right? This is one of the biggest arguments for bears right now is the key stakeholders are not believers in Bitcoin recovering, at least quite yet. Anyone with any address, whether it's a human or an exchange, holding 100 to 10,000 Bitcoin, most of them are continuing to off their Bitcoin at the moment, maybe due to all of the real world events going on, maybe due to the fact that their interests are just elsewhere at the moment, and they don't believe that a rebound is in the cards just yet. But this is a huge dump that's still been going on for a little over a year now, and Bitcoin is treading water. But if Bitcoin starts to follow the trend as it has for most of the last 2 years, it could take a lot of altcoins with it. So we need to be very cautious when one of Bitcoin's primary indicators looks like this. And then last but not least, on our weekly, our October recap report, we did talk about how whale transactions are at least up right now. We did see the largest spike in about about 2 months or so in terms of the amount of whale transactions, $100,000 value transactions or more. So they are being active in the moment. And even though the price for Bitcoin isn't moving much, I guess technically it is jumping right now, but this is at least showing that they're showing some interest in Bitcoin right now and moving large amounts of money, more than they have in a long time. And that's something to keep an eye on, whether it's for bullish or bearish reasons. Right now it appears to be for bullish, but that could change at any moment. So that's a little bit about what's happening on our October recap, and we're already at about 45 minutes past the hour. So I can zoom through a few more metrics for Bitcoin, and then we can potentially take some questions, maybe talk very briefly about Ethereum, whatever you guys would like. For a fourth straight month, it looks like we're still in the red here on our NVT model. So that's something to keep in mind based on where Bitcoin's market cap currently sits. We don't see quite the justified amount of unique tokens moving to keep up this rally. And you can see that, over time, it's been quite predictive, certainly not perfect. We can see that the semi-bullishness here still ended up with Bitcoin moving down. But, usually these sustained red zones, we do see eventual market cap bleeding. So we have to be mindful of that. Hopefully circulation can pick up soon, and that can change the story quite a bit. Ethereum, in the same respect, I believe it's in red as well. Maybe it's not going to load at the moment. That's okay. We won't wait for it. But we can see that volume is up a little. On-chain transaction volume, not too much. It's kind of been down. Let me move back into 6 months. Yeah, so volume is high. So there is some increased interest, just like we saw with whale transactions. Daily active addresses has also been moving up a little bit. These spikes are nice signs here. One back on the 25th and one as recently as yesterday. We can see circulation here still low, which is why the NVT model is pointing to still some concerning signs. MVRV, we talked about this. It is up above 0% again for the 30-day. It's at plus 4%. Generally, if it's between 0 and 15%, it's a mild yellow flag. And if it gets above 15%, that's going to be the sign that a top could be looming at any given moment. But at the same time, the long-term MVRV, this 365-day, this is still at negative 31%, meaning there's still an argument for long-term traders having a lot of meat on the bone to see some rises until it gets close to 0%. So the argument could go both ways. Shorter term, maybe we're starting to get slightly inflated, but long term, there's a good argument for prices to continue rising. We already talked about funding rates. We talked about whale transactions. We talked about supply distribution. Now check this out as well. We're seeing a huge ratio of profit taking for Bitcoin compared to loss transactions happening. And typically huge spikes like this, when the ratio is showing a big bias toward profit taking, it does typically lead to some local tops. So keep that in mind. We can see some of the biggest ones here, right at a local top, right at a local top. This one was a day before, kind of a short local top. This one here, a day before the local top. These here, I mean, all of the biggest spikes, you can see they coincide with price retraces for the most part. So you have to be mindful of that. The day, of course, is not over. We're only about a little over halfway through the trading day according to UTC time. So anything can happen. Just notice that this is the largest ratio of profit to loss as it stands now. So we have to be mindful of that. Mean dollar invested age, not a lot happening here. Dormant tokens continue to stay put. So that gives a little argument for us not being in a bull rally just yet. We are also seeing a small uptick in realized profit loss. That makes sense with the ratio being as high as it is right now. So this is an indication that another top could be forming in the near future. Exchange flow balance looks about neutral. You can see that we're continuing to see that the supply of Bitcoin on exchanges is staying very low, has actually moved up a bit over the past few days. But for the most part, the long-term trend, at least since mid-May, has been just a mass exodus of coins moving away from exchanges and into cold wallets. So that's a good sign. We already touched on social dominance. Weighted sentiment, we're seeing a negative week so far, which is interesting after 3 positive. I wouldn't put too much into this until we start to see some extremes though. And development activity is a little bit down, but that doesn't mean too much in the Bitcoin world for the most part, as long as we don't see it suddenly go to 0 or something strange like that. But yeah, that's a nice recap on what's happening in the Bitcoin world. Let's check in on our chat really quick and see what's going on here. What was the first one? Gotcha. We can check out Aptos, see what's going on there.
Yeah, I think we'll only have social data for the new. I'm afraid for time being, Aptos game is over. Now till attention of the crowd to move somewhere else. It had a good pump, so but I might be wrong. Yeah, you never know. This pump sometimes just keep coming.
So it goes back. Oh, so this is a brand new asset, correct?
Yeah. Aptos and so this is the ones who are now using supposedly the most advanced smart contract language, but it's not proven yet. So yeah, it's a new one.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we've got data that goes back basically 2.5 weeks, going back to the 18th or so. And we had the big pump here on the 23rd. That was when we saw the big volume spike, and prices have dropped ever since. I would imagine with such a new asset, this is fairly normal, where we'll see an initial hype spike, an extended decline, and then you start to see the real market value start to come into play. And we'll probably need, I don't know, at least a couple months of data before we can really understand what is considered high volume versus low volume, and how much utility is actually factoring into price. But for now, as Maxim said, it looks like the party is over for the temporary terms. Maybe people are starting to get a little excited by a small rise that's happened in the last 24 hours, but this is actually a smaller rise than what most altcoins are doing right now. So it's got to be taken with a grain of salt. We don't have funding rate data. Yeah, because this is not an ERC20, or is it an ERC20 and we just don't have data for it yet? Do you know, Max or Maxime?
It's not RCS, no.
Okay.
It's on layer 1 blockchain. So
Gotcha.
exactly like I don't know who to compare it with. Probably we need to compare it with Solana, Near, not even Polkadot or Cosmos, a kind of multi-chain. Yeah, it's a kind of trying to fit into the category Near and Solana.
Got it.
Contenders to Ethereum. Another Ethereum killer, I guess.
Makes sense.
Maybe,
so
yeah.
Yeah, it definitely looks on the social end like the peak hype happened on the 24th, which was pretty much a day after the all-time high, and prices have gone down ever since. Now, I think one thing, if you're trying to swing trade Aptos right now, one thing to look for would be, if prices continue to decline versus the rest of the markets, and suddenly people have a lot of social dominance going toward APT, that would be a sign that people are kind of throwing up their pitchforks and saying that APT was a scam all along. I don't believe that this coin is actually as as unique and legitimate as people hyped it up to be, that would actually be a bottom signal, because it means that there's a lot of emotional traders that are not now proclaiming that the coin is dead and is never going to even recover to the all-time high we saw 2 weeks ago. So we want to look for extremes when it comes to social volume or dominance. And right now, it's kind of just not being discussed because the Dogecoin and Matic and Sushi Party are kind of dominating headlines. But eventually, those parties will die down. There will be further discussion about Aptos, and pay attention to what direction price is going when the discussion rate starts to pop for APT again.
What we can also do, I don't know if we track, can you plot def activity? Here we go.
Yeah.
So
right
the blue
down
one.
here. Let me move.
Actually,
move
no, it's a good chart. You can see that they started build before a token was released and listed a long time ago. It's actually one of the best charts we have for legit projects. They usually start working before releasing token and doing pump. I've seen it quite a few times. So they built something, and you see then there was decrease in def activity because major features are done, mostly fixing, and increase of marketing activity, which leads to the prices. Now, next time we see similar pattern, again, increase in def activity. It means, okay, they build the next wave of what they promised or they want to push to community. And then def activity will start going down. You will see probably with some delay price push. Yeah. And actually, when you check price, always compare against Bitcoin, Ethereum. It has more, for users. I mean, for now, it doesn't matter. But when you really want to see how something performs compared to Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then you will see this pattern, def activity growing, going down, marketing activity increasing. This is a normal cycle in most of the projects, and they seem to be, they know how to do it. Their marketing was good. And I think as they have professional marketers, it will be the same. Def activity is very cool. And the good thing is, tracking def activity. So you know when they're really building something. It was the same for Polkadot and Omisco and back in 17, same pattern, and Uniswap. It will be a good thing with def activity. I think we even still give it for free. So this is really alpha for free, but it's only alpha if you know how to use it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a line. You don't pay attention, but it is available for legit projects. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see that they had some serious marketing and development going on here in mid-August. It eventually dropped a little, but these are still very high numbers. I mean, we're just looking at development activity versus itself over time, but considering it was having over 100 GitHub submissions a day here in kind of late-ish August, that's a sign that this coin has a pretty dedicated team, and it's not just 3 development activity submissions a day. This is a whole lot of people and a team dedicated to innovating and making sure that Aptos is ready for the eventual public trading experience that it eventually had in mid to late October. So, now that trading is live, development activity has died down a little bit, but we're still seeing anywhere between 20 to 31 or 32 submissions per day. So not bad. That's one of the better development activities I've seen for a brand new asset.
Just to remember, we don't want to explain, because there might be some new people joining the stream. Def activity, it's much more advanced on our side than qubits. We track all activity involved. It both comments and some part of comments. And I don't even know exactly what else, but it's aggregated metric. Here is, we have it.
Yeah, this was an article written a couple of years ago by our former colleague Valentin, and he mentioned that generally development activity is used for the purpose of kind of getting validation that the people behind a project believe it will be successful, that it'll be shipping more features, and that there's less probability that the project is just an exit scam. So development activity can almost be used as validation that you're not jumping into a project that nobody's working on and are really just trying to get a price pumped so that the team can leave. So if the development activity of the asset that you're that you have in your portfolio is rising, that's a pretty good sign that they actually care about the innovation of the project, and they're not looking to just pump and dump their own coin. So that's good. And then in terms of the kinds of things that we track, we look at just the number of code pushes, issue interactions, pull request interactions, GitHub wiki edits, number of comments, and number of repos. And then things like Slack comments and simple folder moves, things like that can sometimes show up in GitHub. We ignore them and make sure that we're really only focused on the things that actually matter here, like code pushes and things like that. So we think that the development activity metric on Santiment has some serious value for sure. All right, so that's Aptos. Why don't we take one or two more here? Did I hear Chainlink, Max? All right, let's check out Chainlink, the very popular on social media asset that's had a pretty nice run and is back above $8, it seems. This actually, we take a look at the price. Yeah, I think it's over what we saw here in late September, which would mean that we're at about a 2.5 month high for price, and trading volume has definitely picked up here since late October. So when we see trading volume rise into a price rise, that means the traders are generally interested in that trend continuing. If we see a huge anomalous spike, that can often mean there's a turnaround coming, but this is more of an organic growth. So there can be an argument that this price rise can continue for a bit longer. Not a lot happening on the transaction volume side right now. So that's pretty much all we can say on the volume end. But let's take a look at daily active addresses and circulation here. We see that daily active addresses have been on kind of a higher plane over the last month and a half or so, ever since late September. It really dropped hard here in late August. But yeah, it appears that ever since the bottom, when daily active addresses were low, as prices started to rise, daily active addresses began to heat up as well. Now we can see the 30-day trend line here in kind of that faint orange. It's moving back down again, but it's at least not where it was here in mid-September. So I like how daily active address is looking. It's just nowhere close to what we saw during the major engagement and a lot of bottom buys that were happening here in mid-June. And the failed bottom buys that were happening in mid-May. So the interest is modest, it looks like, for Chainlink right now. And circulation is still leaving a lot to be desired. I think we have Link as one of the NVT charts, and it's actually looking okay. I mean, this is apparently because Chainlink's its market cap has fallen so much, it doesn't need as much circulation to justify that a price rise could happen. And this has been a pretty good predictive chart where you can see, during the red months, there wasn't a lot of price movement. During the long stretch of green that we saw from February 2020 through May 2021, there was a nice price rise. We got all the way up to an all-time high. And then as soon as it turned yellow, neutral, big price drop. And it started to go into this long yellow and orange period of neutral / semi-bearish, where prices really fell off a cliff. And now we've kind of gotten 3 straight months of bullish indication, which means there could be something brewing here for Chainlink. So that's a very nice sign. As far as MVRV goes, this is interesting. Both the 30-day and the 365-day MVRV is now back in positive territory. And there's a lot of altcoins that are still way down at like -20, -30%, kind of like we saw for Bitcoin for the long term. So the fact that Chainlink's long-term traders are back in the positives, that's a bit of a warning sign. It means that there's less opportunity to get in at a really justified risk-free price relative to how other traders are doing, both on the 30 and 365-day time scale. So we have to be mindful of that and be a little worried that it's getting a little overbought and overheated, even though it hasn't made quite the big rebound that Chainlink traders are waiting for. So that, yes, there's a lot of price and market cap that can still be made up for, but it needs to happen without average trading returns surging as much as they have been. As far as funding rate goes, let's take a look at the last week. Yeah, a little bit of longing going on. It's neutralized a little for now, but there's definitely a long bias where people are riding the link price up right now, and there could be some minor liquidations if funding rate starts to get, above 0.00002 or so. So, watch for something like this level and see if the 1 hour funding rate starts to go above it. Because you can see even just these small extremes right here, price tends to go down afterwards. Here, price tends to go down. And even here, price was sliding until funding rate kind of neutralized. Whale transactions, let's see if there's been, oh yeah, there have been some big spikes in $1 million plus whale transactions here at the end of October. Maybe it appeared as though there was a bit of profit taking, but that hasn't stopped Chainlink from rebounding a bit. But yeah, keep an eye on the long-term trend of whales and see if they're starting to engage more and more on Chainlink right now. Supply distribution, let's see if there's anything interesting going on. We'll just take a look at 100,000 to 10 million link addresses. So over the past 6 months, the 100K to 1 million link addresses have definitely shown some serious accumulation. They were holding as low as 7.8% of the supply, and now they hold a little over 10%. While the 1 million to 10 million link addresses have also accumulated, going from 15.3% now at 18.9%. So yeah, these key whales in link have definitely shown interest in gaining more link coins over the past 6 months as so much bleeding has gone on. And that's a nice sign, seeing that these key stakeholders are believers for the long term in the asset. Not a lot of major profit taking bars as we saw for Bitcoin in Chainlink. It is high though. 2.6 means that there's about 2.5 times as many profit transactions going on as loss transactions. And if we get too many of those profit taking spikes, we can see that they usually lead to price tops. Dormant tokens, not a lot of movement for Chainlink. Network realized profit loss, not a lot going on. Supply and exchanges has actually moved up a little bit over the past week. Not to an extreme degree or anything, but watch and make sure that we aren't seeing a ton of link moving to exchanges, because that can be a top signal. Social dominance, people are barely talking about Chainlink relative to what they normally do. So that's interesting and can be a good sign, meaning it's kind of under the radar. Weighted sentiment is fairly neutral. And then development activity is looking pretty normal at the moment, with a consistent 28 GitHub submissions that are notable per day. So that's a quick recap on Chainlink. And why don't we do one more? Was there anything besides Cardano? We can certainly do Cardano, Max, but I feel like we do it almost every week, so we may want to switch it up. Yeah, we could do EGLD. I'll go with the first one I heard. Elrond/EGLD. Let's see what's going on here. So EGLD is not an ERC20. Be mindful of the fact that we don't have full data for it like we do with Chainlink, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others. But as far as volume goes, it does look like we are looking pretty good, where there is some organic growth going on with the amount of trading volume happening. It's been growing ever since about 2 months ago to the day. And I like seeing a pattern that looks like this. going into price growth that's been happening at the same time. It means the traders are showing interest in the trend of market cap rising as opposed to market cap falling, which from TA traders' perspective means that a rally can continue until there's suddenly some disinterest in trading volume, which usually means that the trend is going to break in the near future. So good sign there, at least on a volume perspective. Do we have funding rate? No, we don't have funding rate for EGLD. We don't have whales. We do have social dominance here, so we can see that there's a very, very small rise in discussion, but Elrond is not an asset that is talked about often. It doesn't have serious volatility compared to other assets, so its pumps are not as exciting for the trading community as some others. The last time we saw a huge social dominance spike, I guess, would be early September, but it didn't lead to much. This one here, I don't know what the cause of the huge EGLD social spike was, but it was happening as the rest of the altcoin markets and crypto markets in general were continuing to fall. So I can't put too much into that. Weighted sentiment is up a little bit, not to a significant degree, but maybe a very small amount of euphoria that's happening. And then development activity, it does look like EGLD is getting a pretty nice, healthy amount of development. So in terms of, people worried about EGLD being a scam coin or having a rug pull, it does look like it has a dedicated team that is working to innovate the project and make it more relevant in the crypto ecosystem. So that's a nice sign. We have seen some very big ebbs and flows. So this might be a team that consistently works hard on the project and then takes some breaks. And right now, there might be some more breaks being taken than serious pushes, but that's within the realm of normal. We've seen this plenty of times before. But yeah, overall, it gets anywhere between 16 to 50 notable GitHub submissions per day, which is pretty good for an altcoin. So sorry, we don't have more for EGLD, but because it's not an ERC20, we're a little limited in what we can show. And why don't we do that last asset you mentioned? Remind me one more time, if you don't mind, Max. Moon River, not one that I have looked at before.
Sounds familiar. Max, what is it doing? Where is it mover? Anyway.
Well, let's take a look anyways. It's not an ERC20, so we're again going to be limited in what we can show. Transaction volume is not showing anything special right now. It's pretty dormant, as is the price. This is a pretty niche coin. This is the 322nd market cap asset. So whoever requested it, perhaps they've read something recently about it. And if you know something, we'd love to hear a little more about the fundamental kind of, I don't know, the white paper about Moon River or what its objective is within the crypto ecosystem. But regardless, you can see that a lot of these trading volume spikes lead to huge price spikes followed by a big downfall. One here on July 1st, we had one on August 6th, and we had one on October 4th. And this is pretty typical of smaller market cap assets that don't have a ton of people that are engaging with the network on a day-to-day basis. So that would be one of the primary things to look for, even on more of a granular basis. If you're looking at something like a 4-hour chart, you might be able to catch the beginning of a volume rise, which can lead to a nice spike. Just know that as soon as the spike starts to come down, price tends to come down with it. And that's how a lot of these small cap assets go. So you really have to go granular to try to catch a good swing trading opportunity there. Let's get down to our social metrics down here. Yeah, so not a lot of social dominance at all happening. It certainly doesn't seem to have any special hype, and prices are not really moving too much relative to the rest of the markets. One can argue that, I mean, there's been kind of a nice 24-hour pump, as there is for most altcoins right now. It's up 8%, but it's not causing a lot of social hype by any means at the moment. Weighted sentiment, not a whole lot. It was seeing 3 straight weeks of a slightly more positive sentiment than usual, but it's back in the negative territory, likely just because it's not being talked about much. And then development activity, let's see how much it's actually getting on the development end. Yeah, its GitHub is showing about 10 submissions per day, which is certainly okay. It's about average, I'd say, for an altcoin. Maybe slightly better than average for one that's outside the top 300. So that's a good sign. So Moonriver does seem to have a dedicated team that is working to improve the project. And overall, prices are fairly dormant against development activity. It's not really one that has a lot of alpha compared to the price. But yeah, overall, it doesn't look like a rug pull project by any means. So this would be a good sign. And we appreciate the suggestion for Moonriver. Just can check the chat to see if there's anything else being talked about. Ricardo Ribeiro. Yeah, just let us know, Ricardo, if there's anything about the project in particular that you'd like to discuss. But we appreciate the suggestion, and we appreciate all your suggestions and engagement today, guys. It was definitely fun to go through a very positive week for crypto. And, you know, in terms of whether things can continue, it's up for debate. Maxim believes that we might be on a 5th out of 5 legs, which would lead to a little more upside. We are seeing some caution flags going on. So, you know, in terms of being safe with your trading, understand that taking a little bit of profit is not the worst idea right now when there's this much surging going on, especially without Bitcoin and Ethereum's help. But overall, you know, congrats if you've been buying some of the recent bottoms over the last couple of months, and you're getting handsomely rewarded for that now. And we're looking forward to talking more about the markets next week. So anything else you'd like to touch on, Maxim, before we...
No, that's a good summary. That's a good summary. I think, well, crypto, we are risky people. It's not investment advice, but you can always wait for some good news and talks, either in community, on Twitter, or on public media about some changes, then you can take profits. And generally, from what we see, if this is the 5, it's a time to preparing for even bigger rallies. If even I myself expecting 1 to 2 weeks correction, no ideas when it will start. Today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow, next week, doesn't matter. But I'm preparing, okay, once correction is on the way, this is where you really, or I will go in massively. For now, we do have some exposure. Last time I think we covered it, even though when was my last time here? Maybe months ago. Anyway, we can cover it what we are exposed to next time. No needs to continue.
Sounds good, my friend. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing whether this rally has continued going into next week. And in the meantime, we wish you all a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and warm, and we'll talk to you soon.
Stay safe and warm. Yeah, it's good. You saying it in LA, yeah. But okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much for joining Maxim and running the stream, Max. And we'll talk to y'all soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right.